Welcome to our series, Uncoupling the Myth, where we challenge the narrative that non-monogamy destroys relationships. After a recent podcast episode on this very topic, Natasha was flooded with messages, hundreds of people thanking her for validating their relationship choices and lived experiences. That response made it clear, these voices deserve more airtime. So in this series, we're amplifying real stories and offering a more hopeful, grounded, and nuanced view than what you typically hear about. To be clear, as both a relationship and sexuality expert, Natasha is not here to advocate for non-monogamy or monogamy. She's here to advocate for healthy, ethical relationships, no matter what form they take. Please enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can also find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The information shared on this program is informational and should not be considered therapy. This podcast addresses many topics around mental health and sexuality and may not be suitable for minors. Some topics may elicit a trigger or emotional response, so please care for yourself accordingly. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer Podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes is by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening.
Try to dismantle shame anywhere we can get it. And this is episode 2 of the series Uncoupling the Myth, where we challenge this narrative that non-monogamy destroys relationships. After some recent podcasts and different things I've been involved with on this topic, I've been flooded with messages, literally hundreds of people thanking me for validating their relationship choices and lived experiences. And that response made it clear to me that these voices deserve more airtime. So in this series, I'm trying to amplify real stories that offer a more hopeful, grounded, and nuanced view than what you might typically hear about. To be clear, as both a relationship and sexuality expert, I am not here to advocate for non-monogamy or monogamy. I'm here to advocate for healthy, ethical relationships, no matter what form they take. With all of that being said, I would like to welcome Matt and Gina to the table. I'm so glad you're both here with me today. And just a little bit about them. They're from South Carolina. They were both born into the Mormon or Latter-day Saint religion. They got married in the LDS temple 27 years ago and were true believers until about 2.5 years ago. We'll talk a little bit about that. And now they're looking at life a lot differently, experiencing new things together, and are more in love with each other than ever before. So welcome to the show, Matt and Gina.
Hi, thank you for having us.
I am thrilled. I'm so happy to have you. So yeah, why don't we get started with just giving us a little bit of your Mormon story per se, right? Like, where do you come
Sure.
from? What kinds of backgrounds? What kinds of things were you taught about relationships? And just a little bit about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just like you said, we were both born and raised in the church our whole lives. We met literally the Sunday he got home from his mission, and was engaged a few months later and married 5 months after that. I think, we say we're from Washington, right? Sorry. No.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know if we want to say where we're. Got married in the temple. We had some kids. We had a pretty good relationship. We didn't. Am I missing something?
No.
Oh, yeah. We didn't really fight a lot. We didn't really argue. I'm just throwing off what to say. I don't know.
I can add a few things here and there.
Yeah.
We grew up slightly different. My family was very true believing, very Orthodox Mormon, kind of the Bruce R. McConkie style of Mormonism. Did all of the things, just kind of, everything was expected of me. Have a family, all of my brothers went on missions and all of that. And so it was just kind of what you did. I enjoyed my mission for the most part, but recognize it It was a little unhealthy in places, but I learned a lot of skills. I learned how to get along with a lot of people and talk to a lot of people, which is a skill I get to use now. So that's a good thing. But in fact, my mission when I talk to people is what really led me out of the church, because when I served, it was before the internet. And we were in an area that had a lot of anti-Mormons. And so I would get inundated with literature, and I kept all the literature, but I always went and got the answers from mission presidents and from leaders and that kind of thing. And so I knew all the answers. I was confident in all of the answers to give, and spent, my entire life until a couple years ago giving out those answers, on the internet and all of that. I would argue with people giving those answers. And then a couple of years ago, when the SEC thing happened, I had some frustrations with the church not supporting the youth programs like they did when I was younger. And so I remember having a conversation with my parents about that, and I was yelled at for not supporting the brethren. And so I learned that, oh, that's not a safe space. And this was at a point when I really believed everything still. And then when the SEC thing happened and I realized how much money the church had, I was frustrated. And I told Gina, I was like, wow, that hurts my heart. And she said, well, what does that mean? And I said, oh, I don't know it means anything. It just is kind of makes me sad. And then the next day, the church had their PR statement, we consider this matter closed statement. And that sounded like PR. I've worked in marketing and communications. And so it sounded like PR. And the one thing I know about PR is it's not really honest. And I spent my entire life believing the church could not lie to me. And the leaders never lied. And so I dug in and confronted the fact that the SEC agreement that the church agreed to didn't match up with the PR statement that they said. And I said, wow, if they are lying about this, what else may they be lying about? And then, so that's 2.5 years of every day learning something new. And in that, it literally went from, we believed everything with a child on a mission. We had a child on a mission. We believed everything. And in a weekend, we both decided that it wasn't what we thought it was, and it wasn't true.
Wow.
So all of those questions that I had answers for, I finally looked at the church website and realized, oh, those answers that they gave me to give were actually dishonest. And now I'm reading in my anti-Mormon literature that I was given on my mission, all of the things that are on the church website now. And so that caused us a little bit of we deconstructed religion, and then we decided to kind of just deconstruct everything else along with that.
Well, yeah, because then as like in our upper 40s, we're like, oh, like we can, like, it seemed like for the first time we could make our own decisions about what we wanted to drink. Like we never drank coffee before. It was like, we're adults. Like, why do we not drink coffee and even like drink alcohol? I was like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? He's like, why not? Like, and I'm like, because you just have all these rules and you're told not to, and then you realize, oh, why do we have these rules? I don't like
my mission plaque had section 89 on it as my missionary scripture. So learning that that all of that wasn't what I thought it was either has been a little hard. But again, we are grateful that we at this point in our lives we can enjoy life together as responsible adults and make our own decisions. And so we just deconstructed everything. And we went from having a good marriage, and we're told that, and I have a good example in my parents, their marriage is good, but we went from having a good marriage to having an incredible marriage almost overnight because we had a filter between us, a filter we didn't know about, and a filter I see in relationships in the church still to this day. I see it with my parents, that we had a filter. It was my responsibility to be the priesthood holder, and I wanted her to be able to look at me as a worthy person. She wanted me to see her as a worthy person. And so with that filter between us, we could never really be vulnerable with each other and talk about things the way married couples probably should. And so that opened up lines of communication that hadn't existed before. And it was incredible because I was now married to my best friend, whereas I was previously married to my eternal companion
Yeah.
that I got along with, but it was not what it was fine. It was good, but it wasn't this. And what this is incredible. We've been told so many times by members. I've had friends reach out and say, "Why do you guys seem so happy?" And they didn't know we had left the church. And I started to bring that up, and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, we don't want to hear that we don't want to hear that. That's okay, okay." And then that was all I would hear from them.
Right.
And then I was able to talk to some siblings who had left, and I said, "Hey, is this normal?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we feel exactly the same way." And so I realized, oh, the church is in between couples.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
With you, Gina, did you also come from a fairly Orthodox family or more nuanced? Or?
It was pretty much like my dad was a convert and he was kind of shy. So he wasn't like in high like leadership positions, but we went to church, every Sunday. My brothers all went on missions. I mean, we were pretty. There's just some differences, but
Compared to my family, they were not Orthodox, but compared to normal society, they were very Orthodox
Sure.
Mormons.
Okay. But within the Mormon spectrum, a little bit more flexible. Okay.
Mhm.
And so as your husband's looking into this, financial kind of drama that was happening a few years ago, what did you notice for yourself? Were you worried? Were you scared? Were you just like curious and like, oh, this is interesting? And
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy. It was kind of like, oh, that's weird, and I was just kind of right along with them, but he's the researcher, so he does all the research and stuff. I just remember like coming home from work and he'd be like, "Oh, this is bad. Like the church is hiding all this money. They're hiding, and all this stuff." And then the next day he'd be like, "Oh, it's even worse." Like, so I kind of learned it right along with him. But then, like he was saying, once you realize the church can lie about something that you just thought, of course they never could, and you just put all your faith in them even if things don't make sense. I mean, it's the shelf, and then the shelf breaks and then you realize everything you put on your shelf, you're like, oh, like, well, now it makes sense.
You had a hard time with
because it's not
Keep Sweet.
Yeah, I watched the Netflix Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. And then because we were still going to church for a while after, and it was just so hard because that's all I saw was just the children and the talks and like all that, and it was really hard. We kept going to church for a while. We'd just go to sacrament meeting, but it was just
yeah.
So we are officially out today.
Yeah.
Today, this afternoon, our records are removed. So it was literally
Hey. Oh, wow. On this day that you're podcasting with me.
I know.
Don't excommunicate us now.
Wow. Okay, so what I'm hearing, which is very typical from so many folks I work with, is this kind of idea that whether we realize it or not, we usually don't realize it because it's the fishbowl we swim in, but we're kind of being kept in kind of a perpetual adolescent relationship with Big Daddy, which is the church, and they get to tell us, like you're mentioning, what you should wear and what kinds of things you should put in your body, what kinds of ways you can be sexual, right? Which is this very kind of heterosexual marital box that you can be sexual. And even then you need to be careful to be sexual in righteous, holy ways. And so even though you're married and you're getting along, you're having a good marriage, what that does, when I hear you use the word filter, is that things that we would naturally maybe be curious to explore, we don't even allow ourselves to explore.
Yeah, can't even think about it. Like,
can't even think about it, much less talk to your partner about it, right?
Yeah, because I feel like when I was like a teenager and a young adult, like I kind of like went as close to the line as I could, kind of thing. But when you get married in the temple, then you're like, okay, this is serious. Like this is your eternal companion, your eternal salvation. Like you want to make it to the, kingdom. So there's no more messing around. So, and again, the filter, you turn things off. Like you're like, can't think about anything. It's me and him, and you can't even think about fantasies or anything,
We really didn't have the language to communicate about that either. Like there was not really, we didn't have the ability we didn't have the language to have those conversations at all. And so our sex life was fine, but it was, once a week, normal, it was great, but it was that, and it was, and it was difficult for her, and we can get into it with garments and things like that, but
yeah, that was a big filter, is taking the garments just at night, and just to be able to be close to each other and feel sexual. You didn't feel like that with.
And for her, it was difficult because if she was to put on something sexy or not wear anything, that in her mind was making a decision that made herself vulnerable to saying, I want this. And that you're balancing that out with the virginal church person. And that felt uncomfortable to her. And so now just being able to go to bed without anything on, everything can just be natural and normal, and closeness happens regularly without having to make a out
like, ooh, look at me,
a decision, a decision based on it.
Yeah.
It can just be, a simple touch. So
Yeah, a more organic type
yes,
of
for sure.
progression of whether or not we're gonna go from cuddling to, maybe having more sexual activity, versus when you're having to be more intentional, like, okay, I'm going to take my garment off. It's almost like a signal, right? Oh, I guess we're going to have sex before we even have a chance to really talk to each other.
It's
or
just so silly. Again, looking back on it, it was awful. And now everything's so just taking that simple thing away opened up so much to us.
Well, and just how you just feel more attractive and sexual not wearing that.
And especially for the women not having that extra layer, and then the 2 extra layers and the 3 extra layers, she actually was able to be in touch with her body. And, that means that you want to wear clothes that look good. And so you work on yourself a little bit more. And, it's kind of how much control it hinders our development.
Can you speak to that in your own words, Gina, as far as what impact do you think wearing the garment had on your relationship with not only your own body, but maybe your own sensuality or sexuality?
I think it's just the layers, and you just feel frumpy all the time. Like when you're just out in public, but you're wearing the garments, and then I wear the clothes over the garments so they won't stick out. And then I wear whatever I'm wearing on top of it. It's just like all the layers, and you just feel frumpy. And then going to bed, you're just like, they're not pretty. I don't know. I feel like you just look, and I don't know, I just feel like free, but it just kind of makes you like, I can wear things I couldn't wear before. I mean, even this I couldn't, because things would be sticking out. So I'd wear a shirt under this and wear this over.
The change was drastic. Just seeing it in her, the change was drastic.
You could notice in her.
Oh, unquestionable. It was incredible.
Make you feel better about yourself. You feel like
there's something about being
I was always hiding. I was just always hiding, and there's anything sticking out or showing or lines or
being more attuned with your sensuality, instead of kind of the general message we get in purity culture as women is to hide it, right? And to divorce our sexuality from our purity or our worthiness, or those are really interesting dilemmas that we're having to deal psychologically with. So,
but it's been great to have each other to be able to almost go therapy with each other as we discuss all of these things. Every day we're talking about all of these things, and so we can deconstruct together. I have friends that have to do it by themselves with a spouse who still believes, and my heart breaks because they have to do that alone. And for me to have somebody that I can just say, hey, I heard this, or I saw this, or this song came on the radio today and I broke down in tears for no reason because it hit me really hard. I have that person.
Yeah, I'm a big champion of mixed faith marriages. And at the same time, I do think it's obviously easier to be on the same page.
No question.
Yeah, no, but we're thankful every day that it went this way and not the other way.
For sure. Okay, so you mentioned earlier, so we start deconstructing one big lie. It starts with the financial stuff, right? That the church is hoarding billions of dollars when
Hundreds of billions.
hundreds of billions of dollars, while we in the ward
Right,
are counting every penny and we
and cleaning the church and like
can't spend $28 on the activity day, girls, because we don't have it in the budget. So and they're asking for huge sacrifices for people, especially people who are in poverty are still expected to pay tithing. And so these stories start really kind of weighing on us. And then yeah, like you're saying, then it starts this kind of domino effect. So it's like, okay, well then what do we think about this? And what do we think about that? And how we, what do we think about coffee or alcohol? So walk me through a little bit what the conversations, whether it's detailed or as abstract as you'd like to share, started happening with in regards to themes of sexuality.
Go.
I know. Well, alcohol had a little part of that. and that's one thing I say this sometimes, but I was so mad because like I was like the church lied to us because they said like alcohol like numbs your feelings and it like numbs your thoughts and you can't think clearly and it I don't know, like all this stuff. And I'm like, it enhances everything. Like I felt like I know this is
To an extent, obviously.
but like we had a couple of drinks
A couple of drinks.
and we would be in bed and stuff and I'm just like everything feels amazing. Like I don't know, like I was just kind of bitter about that. Like I'm like
But it
this
led
whole time, yeah.
it led to conversations. And so
And
the
that's it.
conversations just turned sexual and fantasies and things like that. And then it was more of a mode of deconstructing and finding out what do we believe. And we realized that each other are the most important. And beyond that, we don't really know we don't know. And so we just decided to well, I found a quiz that we could take. And so we had a couple drinks and we took the quiz, the couples quiz. I'm sure you're familiar with the yes, no, maybe quizzes.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's like 500 of them out there.
Yeah. We'd use the carnal collaboration, something like that. But yeah, we took the quiz and
so I answer, he answers, but the if one of us said no to something, then it doesn't come up. So we could freely say yes or freely say, well, maybe, but not be afraid, like, well, what if he says no, then it just won't show up and he'll never know that you said yes to things. And it just, yeah.
So we looked at the answers and I thought, who am I married to? Who is this woman I'm married to? After 25 years, who is this? At that point, we just started talking and we literally just went through every question and just started talking. And it was just, again, we didn't have that language before. And then all of a sudden we had this language that we could actually discuss things. Yeah. And even just started with the idea of parallel play.
Well, first I want to say like, just you being like, who is this I'm married to? Because there's things like I haven't thought about for, 25 years or whatever, because I've been married and you just don't think about those things. So there's that, but also just being like, I'd be open to trying that if you wanted to. Like, I don't, maybe it doesn't do anything to me, but if you want to try and see, like just being open to like trying new things and all that. And like, why not, kind of thing. So that was a big part of it too, because it's just like, it's nothing we even ever talked about before. So yeah.
Right. Like not even options to consider, right? Which is, I love the yeses. Those are easy, but I also really love the maybes because that shows this willingness to be like, I'm not sure, I don't know, or, maybe I would enjoy that.
Well, and even some of the yeses were like, but this will never happen. Like, how would this ever happen?
We call friends from church and ask if that's
they're interested in
so we literally had no idea. We had a concept of what swingers were, from movies and TV and the key parties and the guy with the slick back hair and the tuft of chest hair and that old stereotype of what that was. And so we didn't have anything.
So we weren't like interested in that, but just like one of the questions was being in the same room as other people having sex or someone else having sex and you're having sex in the same room. Like, or like, you know, that sounds, but again, like we thought like that would never happen, but but just like just thinking about things, even just thinking about them and talking about them and stuff, like really like got us going for a while, you know.
Right. There's a lot of power in fantasy, even if people only stay in fantasy lane, when they can fantasize about the forbidden, the taboo, the excitements, it does impact drive. It impacts the sense of curiosity and novelty, which is always usually an aphrodisiac, to relationships.
I would get phone calls in the middle of the day from Gina telling me, she's like, I can't stop thinking about anything else.
Mhm.
That's all I think about. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to being me as a 15-year-old, I guess. She just, yeah. So it was a very fun, exciting time, even before anything like that was the case.
Yeah. So how do you move from then, like, oh, we're just thinking it's fun and we don't even know where the heck we would even do some of these things, to like, wow, let's maybe be more intentional and seek out.
He's a researcher. He's a researcher.
Yeah.
He started looking at, well, we were going to be going out of town, and so we're like, oh, like we'd never been to a strip club before, and it was like, I wouldn't mind going to a strip club. You want to go? He's never went to one before. It's like that might be something. So we were kind of looking for something like that to do out of town. He's also he's a dancer. He loves dancing. He's always loved dancing. His whole life he talks about stories about going dancing, but we never went dancing because
we didn't have time. We were busy doing all the things. So it was a part of my life growing up, and for 25 years it wasn't really a part of my life. And so,
except for like the Golden Green Ball or whatever that thing was, like,
yeah.
I mean, where would we go dance? Like you go dance, people go dancing at clubs, but we don't go to those places because they have alcohol there and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like we just never did. And I also wasn't. I like music and stuff. I can't translate it into how I dance. So I didn't really like to go dancing because I knew I felt awkward, But now we have a couple drinks of alcohol. I'm like, well, either I'll loosen up or I won't care. So
Yeah, right.
She also had a fantasy of watching me dance she liked the idea of me dancing with somebody who could dance skillfully. And so that was a big thing for her to be
I
able
would just
to
love to watch him like dance and just like do his stuff not with me because I would be awkward, like, but yeah, if there was someone he could do that with and I could watch, like I would love that.
But she's so much better now because in the last couple of years, we go to places where you don't have to have a Book of Mormon between you when you dance. So she can actually be close enough to me to feel what the rhythm feels like. And so now she's very comfortable moving and dancing and being on the dance floor, even not with me, because she knows how that feels to be in rhythm with the music.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty cool. So we had that idea of like going out of town. And so I just started doing research about how do you find places like this, and ended up finding that there was a club. Because we were looking for places, not like young dance clubs, but places for people closer to our age, and saw that Lifestyle Club has dancing, and we're like,
so he's like, what's Lifestyle?
What's Lifestyle? What's that? I don't know. And so I looked into that. I'm like, oh, it's just kind of a place for people that are sexually liberated to go hang out and party and dance. And so literally from then I started listening to podcasts. What is the first time in a club like? What's the first time in a club? What's it? So I listened probably to 10, and I'm like, hey, Gina, maybe instead of going to a strip club and going dancing, we can just go to a place like this. And she's like, yeah, that sounds perfect. And so,
which I actually felt more comfortable doing that than going to a strip club, because I was like, I don't put $1 and I don't know what to do in a strip club, like, so it was like seem more, like more comfortable going somewhere like that. And or like we're just go and dance and watch and talk to people, and like it was pretty hard,
Yeah.
You say it's very, very intentional. And that's the one important thing, is that every step along the way for us has been very, very intentional. We've taken our time going through this. And one of my frustrations with the social media, other podcasts, ex-Mormon Reddit, secret lives of Mormon wives, everything is unintentional, and everything is, we got drunk, we were with some friends, and we ended up doing these things. And that of course is going to blow up. And so we've been very intentional as we go through these steps and progress and change our rules of what we're comfortable with. We do this with communication and go through it step by step, take our time, make sure we're both on board. All of those things that are really important to making sure that we have a successful outcome. Because when you do just jump in or end up in a situation where you're not expecting or don't want to be, or being coerced by your partner in a situation where people have been drinking and that kind of thing, you're going to end up blowing it up and having problems. And of course, those are the stories that, get told in therapist's office and in places where maybe if the therapist doesn't have a lot of experience with lifestyle or swinging or open marriages or whatever that is, they're just going to connect the two things as problem with a marriage, lifestyle things. And we haven't found that to be the case at all, because most of the people we know are so intentional with what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's probably where my bias is too, because so many people come to me to figure this out, right? Kind of like, even I think I think there's two paths. This is very like sweeping with wide brushes, but I think there are the people that kind of caught up in a moment that they're not necessarily prepared for. And I never want to shame that, because that happens in life. We get caught up in moments, and yeah, it might blow up a little, but it also is an experience. And I think so much of what we need to deconstruct as post-religious folks is that we were told mistakes will ruin us, right? We were told regrets, especially sexual regrets, are kind of like the end of your worthiness, capacity. And that you'll always be ruined by that, with all the object lessons and all that. So I do have a lot of compassion for the in the moment without really planning type moments. And I think even those folks can end up in healthy spaces. But I do also think that there's a lot of people, because we were brought up Mormon and with goals and with young women's values checklists and, like Boy Scout checklists and all these things, that I see a lot of people coming to see me way before they've tried anything, like, okay, we're interested. We want to know, we want to have a lot of information. I would say every time I throw my navigating ethical non-monogamy class, I would say half of the people that come in have not done anything. Mm-hmm. So that speaks to this.
He's really good. He's really good at researching and finding out stuff. And then I just listen to the cliff notes.
Right. And
but that's the thing I wanted to say just about the church. Once we deconstructed church, we realized we don't know what happens after this life. And this might be the only life we have. We were sealed in the temple. So it was, unless somebody really messed up, we're probably going to stay married, But now it's anything can happen. And we don't, and so two things, one, this life is so important now because we don't know what happens after, but also I don't want to lose him, and so and that's the other thing, is we were very careful, with each step, our first time going to that club, we talked about it before, we talked about it after, and just kind of what we liked, what we didn't like, maybe listen to a couple more podcasts. And I mean, just very careful and intentional, because we don't want to ruin our marriage. So I feel like it can be done responsibly. And
I think that there's something people wonder if they go to a club like that. And that's just one way that it's a way we like to meet people, because we're very, we love meeting people, but we're very interested in the vibes people give up. Our general thing that we're attracted to is other couples who are super into each other. And we find that to be what we like the best. And so meeting somebody through a website or an app is a little bit trickier, whereas when you actually meet them in person, it's a lot easier. But there's no expectation of going to a club that you'll do anything. There's so many times we go and this is their first time that they've ever been. And you will find no happier people than when you walk into a club and say, we've never done anything like this before. Everybody is going to support you. nobody's going to talk you into anything.
Yeah.
You are not going to be put in a situation that you don't want to be in at all. Everybody will protect you because everybody understands how incredible it is and how protective we need to be of that and of the people's experience that are there. It's just been, it's again what I thought I was going to experience going to a place like that versus what we experience every time we go. We've probably been to 5 clubs and we go to all kinds of parties pretty much almost every weekend.
I know.
We are at an event or party or something of some kind or out with friends. In fact, last weekend there was no playing. We went to a party and we saw probably 25 friends that we haven't seen in a long time. And it was just dance floor and partying and talking and catching up and that kind of thing. And that it's our community. So really I don't want to sound like an evangelist because this is not for everybody, but it's kind of my training. I was taught to find something that is important to me and share it. I'm not going to go full time and do this for 2 years.
You're not going to make sure.
But I can be accused of being an evangelist for it because of what it's done for us and our marriage. But we recognize that it's not for everybody. If one partner is not into it and just doing it to keep the other person happy, that's a recipe for disaster. But we've also seen when we go to parties and clubs and we introduce ourselves, it's not rare when we run into people that have been married longer than us. Mm-hmm. In most of society, when we go to places and meet people, we, as people who've been married almost 28 years, by far we've been married longer than anybody we ever meet. And in those clubs and in those places, it's very common to find people that have been married 30, 40 years.
Yeah, well, the reality, I mean, not that it's the only way to invite novelty into a long-term marriage, but the reality is that the research shows that long-term marriages do kind of struggle in the sense of sexuality, keeping fresh and keeping current. And so I do think this is one of the benefits of the lifestyle is that people in long-term relationships, it feels very edifying and rejuvenating and repassionizing, their relationship. And when it goes well, I think the research is definitely showing that people are seeing far more benefits than risks to being in the lifestyle. And it's pretty much what you're experiencing. I want to go back to a few things that you said. Let's go back to the alcohol discussion, because I know obviously there are folks who struggle with alcohol. At the same time, when you say, well, we were told that it numbs us and all that, my belief is what actually numbs our feelings is perfectionism and anxiety. That's what numbs our feelings. And so a lot of times, especially when I'm working with women who are either anorgasmic or just have a hard time relaxing or, getting into the mood, they'll say, well, I don't want to rely on alcohol or cannabis or something like that to relax. And I'm like, okay, that's one way to look at it. But another way to look at it is that your brain, having grown up in a high demand religion, is not normal. It's anxiety filled and it's perfectionistic. And so you're having to do a lot of mental gymnastics to get yourself into a type of relaxed state where you can surrender to pleasure and orgasm and those kinds of things. And things like alcohol and cannabis and other, substances can actually help you with that. And you can see it almost like a sex toy, right? Or a sexual aid or something like that can just help you get into that space. And as long as we're interacting with these substances in ways that are well balanced, that we're not falling into some type of dependence, these can be really helpful tools. So I just wanted to put that out there to kind of support your.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too. Like, it could be a misconception too that people leave the church and then they abuse alcohol or drugs or whatever, but it's like, again, we're like wanting to be very careful. Like, we have a family, we have jobs, like we have, we're not going to try to do anything reckless. Like, we're responsible, but it was crazy just being like, we're how old? And we like, I don't know, just
feeling like adults for the first time in your mid to late 40s is a wild feeling. But it just, the drinking, and especially for somebody like Gina who does get up in her head sometimes, it does just allow that to go. And even just between us, having a little bit of lubrication ingested allows us to communicate in ways that we were told were not ways that you communicate with your eternal companion.
Right.
No, and those weren't modeled to us growing up. Those weren't conversations. My conversations about sex with my parents were me confessing to my dad in the bishop's office. So that was it. And so, and
yeah, getting rid of that slippery slope mentality is hard, and then you're like, oh, well, we're on the slope and it's kind of fun. And we haven't killed ourselves or anything, and so you start really being able to practice. And I think it's practice really that helps us kind of get past a lot of these constructions, right? Because the more you practice it, the more you're like, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought or what I was told it was going to be. Let me go back. So one of the things you said, even right before we got on the podcast, Matt, was your frustration, and you kind of alluded to it with what happens kind of in the media. And you specifically said that you were bothered by some of the language, whether we're using swinging or open marriage or lifestyle or polyamory. So do you want to speak a little bit of what your kind of beefs are with that?
Thank you. That's I appreciated also when you were on Mormon Stories and kind of brought this up, and we were like, yeah, go Natasha, because we finally had somebody speaking for us. My frustration is that the terms that we use are very specific, and a lot of times in the media, in podcasts, and especially in the ex-Mormon and ex-religious world, just blanket terms are thrown around without the understanding. Something like it's always said open marriage. Well, our marriage is not open. We have a hobby where we do sexual things with other people, but that's a hobby. That's not an open marriage at all. Our marriage is not open.
Tell me a little bit more, because this is a good chance to educate people. How would you define open marriage versus what you're describing right now?
Well, I feel like, because we do everything together. We go to clubs together, we meet people together. If stuff happens after that, we're together. We're always together. We're always same room. There's different things, but we don't do anything separate.
Our chats are with other people, are always in groups with.
We do group chats. So, and it's fine. Like, I know people have different dynamics and things that works for them. People like to have their own boyfriend, girlfriend on the side, or they all, I don't know, like, that's fine, but that's not what we do. That's why I don't feel like we have an open marriage, because we're always together. We do everything together.
So we have friends that they would say that they have an open marriage where they each date separately outside of their marriage. They're very intentional about it, but they also take very long breaks from it, where they'll take 6 months where they aren't doing that with other people, where they're just back to being monogamous. And so they're very careful about that. And so the idea of open marriage to me is just open dating while you're married. So there's swingers, which is just kind of incorporates all of it. Same as lifestyle incorporates all of it. I don't like the term lifestyle, but I understand it, because it isn't really a lifestyle. That would imply that this is all we do, that we're driven by sex. And if you go to places, clubs and places like that, you'll find it's all normal people. It's the police officers, it's the doctors, it's the teachers, it's people in everyday life that you run into and wouldn't think that they would enjoy this. They do, because this is just a hobby that we experience. It's not our lifestyle.
That's true, yeah.
It's just something we do as a hobby. And we find great enjoyment. And very often we ask, what do we say to ourselves?
I don't know what
is this real life? After we have an experience, we're just like, this can't be real. There's no way this is a real life that we're living, that we get to do this. It should not be possible. But I think that there's just a lot of those types of terms that there's polyamory, which is a separate thing. I mean, it all gets classified. So for me, when I think of open marriage, I think of that's scaling half dome. Like you're a rock climber, that's scaling half dome without a rope. What we do together, communication, taking our time, doing everything together would be like going to a climbing gym with a rope and a mat underneath you. It's very controlled and safe. But I think a lot of times when people hear the term rock climbing, their brain goes to climbing Half Dome, and they think, wow, that's dangerous. That's so dangerous that you would do that. And we're like, no, this is completely safe. There's pads and ropes sometimes, but that's different. That's a different subject altogether. But yeah, so it's just that there's a conflation of terms that when people have the connotation in their head of what it is, they're thinking of something wild and crazy, whereas what we live is not really wild and crazy. It's very careful and intentional, and
Yeah. And
so
I see the language developing, you think about the LGBTQ community and how many words have been added, right? LGBTQIA, like we get more and more terms, because as people are able to identify and orient in certain ways, they're like, well, that term doesn't totally fit me, and so they'll come up with a new term. And I would agree that I think that the term swinging gets used a lot when that's not what people are doing. I think the term polyamory gets thrown a lot, which really implies you have multiple relationships where there is commitment and, emotional intimacy, and that's not what everybody's doing. Your term about open, I mean, even ethical non-monogamy, some people are like, I don't know if I love the term ethical, like that feels like it's a moral overlay or something, so there's just so many terms that get used. I think swinging, polyamory, and open marriage are the ones that just get thrown out there without really explaining or conceptualizing what those terms actually mean to the people who, either identify with them or don't. So I think that's a good.
And I get open marriage. I mean, that works for some people if that's what they both want and they're both okay with it. That's great. That's just,
Yeah, they're all legitimate. They're all legitimate.
yeah.
We're more back to the community, just going places, meeting people and making friends. And because we go to different places, sometimes we see people at different events, or we go to an event we haven't been to a while and we see people we haven't seen in a while.
The way that this changes in society is stories and people telling stories and their stories. And the problem is so much in the lifestyle is kept under shame, that it allows people outside of it to tell the story. And that's a little bit why we wanted to do this and out ourselves, I guess, is that we love the story. We will defend what we do to anybody who asks, because those same people were people that when we left the church said, you're going to ruin your marriage. Well, how could you do this to your marriage? And then we left and we found
the church, yeah,
it was incredible. And so those same people are going to ask, why would you do this? It puts your marriage in peril and in jeopardy. And we found, no, it's literally the opposite. Our communication, for example, we say our marriage was good. We liked being around each other well enough, but we liked our breaks. And, I would go out of town for work, and it was nice to just not have to deal with all of the family stuff and that kind of thing. And it was just, we would talk, but all of our conversations were very, the kids need this, we need to do this. It was very operational. But since this, I cannot wait to see her every single day. We talk on the phone every day as she's driving to work. And that's something we never, ever did before. So we are in constant contact with each other. And it's just helped a great deal. So I will defend what we do because I have the experience of seeing how good it is for us. And of course, we never had to worry about things like infidelity, so we already have a base of trust. And for some people, there's a lot of things you probably have to work at to get to this point. And like you said, if you're having an issue in your marriage, this probably won't save your marriage. But if your marriage is heading that direction anyway, then why not give it a shot and see if it can help? But
right.
But
that's not our situation.
Yeah. No, and I hear this from clients all the time, and it's my personal experience too. One of the things I hear is community. People find the best of friends, especially if you've deconstructed things like monogamy, like sexuality, and you're like-minded with other people. Of course, that's going to be a really great space to meet other people who have similar views, like in any community. And then this idea of connection, right? So my partner and I mean, we reconnected after 30 years of being apart. So we are very in love, very connected. And then anything that has to do with this realm has just upped the ante on that. It's like we can spend hours talking through all the juicy tidbits and all the, and even the more difficult things like the insecurities and, oh, I didn't realize I would feel this way. And what's this about? We just love spending that time talking. And so anything that we've experienced before, which I didn't really even realize it could be better than this, has actually gotten better, right? Which is fascinating.
That's the thing, because you were like, even like tell us the bad parts or whatever, and we're like, there really isn't any, but if there was ever any like something we had to work through, like we worked through it, and then it made things even better. Like, so same for us.
Yeah. So you don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, as far as things like jealousy is probably the most common issue that would come up or somebody would be afraid of. And for me, I'm lucky in that I have an example of somebody who has zero jealousy. She's the opposite. She's literally the opposite. So
you're cheerleading. You're like, I want to see it all.
Yeah. Yes. Very much so.
I am happy for him if there's like someone younger. I don't care. I don't care. I'll admit they're prettier, they're hotter, they're younger. Like it's a
regular situation.
Yeah.
It's terrible. What a terrible. But when we started, I had the I don't say jealousy, but I would have things that would make me uncomfortable for no reason. And I would have the feeling and I would say something, not in the moment. We would talk about it and I'd say, man, I didn't like that, or I didn't like the way that made me feel. And then by the time I'm done talking about it, I'm like, oh, that there was no reason for me to feel that way. And I look back on some of those first conversations we had, and like it's so beyond thinking about anything like that now. I have a good example of how not to be jealous, but I realized that so much of those feelings came from society telling me that I was supposed to have those feelings. I didn't have the insecurity or jealousy. It was just that didn't feel comfortable because it was something that I was taught for so long that I shouldn't be okay with. And then, now it's to the point where it's like, yeah, that's awesome. Like there is none of this.
And I'm lucky too, because I think part of why I don't feel jealous too is because I am so secure in our relationship, because he's really good at at telling me, like, I know, like he's not going anywhere and all that. So I'm lucky that way. So I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, right. And I think it gives couples an opportunity to buoy that foundation, right? Of, hey, we really matter to each other. Yeah, there might be people that might be objectively considered more attractive or younger, more fit. But at the end of the day, even though we've been taught a lot by society that we should care about those things and be competitive about those things and threatened by those things, you start realizing that doesn't matter so much, right? Like, especially when you have that secure base, like that doesn't change our love for each other. That doesn't change.
Right. And these are just friends. Like we're meeting people, meeting friends, and then if there is a connection, like that's even better. But then with him, like he's my partner. I'm not in a relationship with them too. So it's just like they're friends, and we might see him all the time. We might not ever see him again, like because people are in different spaces in life or live in different places. But it's all good. We're just making friends and all that. But at the end of the day, he's the one I'm in the relationship with, and I guess that's why it's like for us, it's different from polyamory and stuff like that, because we're not in relationships.
Yeah.
And she does appreciate that, yeah, when there are, beautiful women involved, and, and I come back to her and, she knows that she's the most important by far, without question, that gives her a little bit of a power boost.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
And there is that feeling of,
people that like him. It's obvious they're attracted to him. They like him. They watch him and dance and everything. And it's kind of like, yeah, he's mine.
But we do. I can't even. You threw me off guard right there. You threw me off. I can't even speak to it. But I had something, but I don't know what it was. But I was going to say that when we were going to church, something Gina was talking about, we've always had a rule in our marriage where we don't talk bad about each other to anybody.
Mhm.
I don't even know if it was a spoken rule. It was just something that we have never, ever, I've never said a bad word about her
Mhm.
to anybody in my life. And so she would be frustrated because she'd go to a Relief Society event or a get together with the girls from church, and she would just be stunned because all she would hear is bad talking about their husbands. And so it was a frustration for guys that what we'd get together and watch the UFC fights and make
Right.
fighters. It wasn't really that. But in lifestyle events and parties and clubs, that does not exist.
Yeah.
Everybody is so supportive of their partner, of each other.
Yeah.
And so that security that's there is all encompassing. And it's almost like the security between couples makes it a more secure environment, to the point where we've been sought out by single females in vanilla situations who come up to us and say, what you guys have, I like. And that's led to a couple of incredible experiences with some women who they've said that it fixed whatever they had in their brain that was keeping them from being able to experience a relationship,
Mm.
so that they were able to kind of leave the situation with us and end up in relationships where they were happier, whereas before that they didn't feel worthy of
Mm.
affection, love, relationship because of whatever happened in their past. And so not only can it be just fucking fun, but it can be healing in some,
The healing.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just to see that, and
Hmm.
to see that.
I had done a lot of sexual shame deconstruction prior to doing anything in the lifestyle, I guess. And as I've entered the lifestyle a little bit, it's like, oh, here's a whole nother segment of sexual shame healing that I can find, I can sense myself tapping into. And it's kind of beautiful that way. So especially when you have a healing ally, right? Which I think is what you're describing, when you have a partner who is your ally in that, or you have play folks who can be allies, through
Or anyway, or you go to
partner.
the bathroom and everybody is just like, "Oh, you're so pretty. You look so good." Everybody's so uplifting and so like encouraging. And
That's what I was going to say that I completely forgot, was that it's a little bit of an ego boost. And it's we're supposed to have the humility, but there is something in us that needs to feel validated. And so being in this is an ego boost. Gina knows that she's very attractive to people because she heard it from me her entire life, and she believed it somewhat, but she's very aware that when she goes to clubs and goes to places that that's the case. And so it validates what I was hearing, and so, or what I was saying. And so it's a very validating ego boost, I guess. And we find that with everybody, that they feel that same support.
It is super fun to feel sexy and attractive. And
yeah, but then it helps you in life. Like you just have
right.
more confidence and it's really helped me to like just talk to people because we live in the South. We're not from the South. And so everybody's just so friendly and go up and start talking to people. And it was hard for me to do that, but it's made it.
To see her growth and just being able to go up to strangers in that environment and just start a conversation, it's been amazing, because that's a skill that she's learned. It's a skill that I developed as a missionary, and over a lifetime of selling and working in my jobs. But for her, that was very difficult, to be able to just go up and start a conversation. And so those are skills that she's learned.
We're
And
bringing it back to church because you go to church based on where you live and you're told go in this ward and you have this calling and you work with these people, and those are kind of like your friend, like, you know what I mean? You don't really have to try it. You have things that you have your religion in common, and if you have kids the same age, you have that in common. It's not, but just to be like, go to different places and hear their stories it's just so fun. And
there's a lot of very orthodox, high demand religion where we live. And so, we have a university in town that's very famous for being very hardcore. And so a lot of people Where in Utah, it would be all ex-Mormons. Here, it's a lot of
We've only met two.
it's a lot of ex-Baptists. Yeah.
But yeah.
So
Right.
they have very similar stories. It's funny. We'd say, yeah, we came from high demand religion. And they're like, I came from high demand religion. And then we're like, we were Mormon. And they're like, oh, yeah, you might win. You might win that one.
But yeah, some of them.
It's a different level.
Some of them have some great stories, though. Some of them have some incredible stories about their religious issues too. So it's been a fun thing to have that in common. But yeah, not a lot of Mormons here.
Back to the, feeling sexy and attractive. Even when we were single as LDS folks, we weren't really supposed to focus on that. That wasn't, you had to be kind of careful and not be too sexy because you didn't want to attract a guy for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And so we've been divorced from our sexuality for so long, right? And so to be able to be in spaces where you're like, no, I can bring my sexual energy. That doesn't mean we're going to have sex, right? But I can bring my sensuality. I can bring my flirtatiousness. I can bring my confidence, which we have been taught to tap all of that down, even after we're married, right?
That's true.
We're not supposed to like even ride home with a person of the opposite sex or something like that, So it's just like, it is kind of a whole new world, and it's pretty beautiful. Okay, I'm looking at the time. I know that we're kind of getting to our time frame, but is there anything I'm not asking you about that you want to share? Is there anything that I haven't touched on that you feel is important?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about everything.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it feels like time's flown by. I mean, I can talk about this forever. It's a fascinating, again, it's something that we were taught that was terrible, and we found it to be nothing but just enjoyable and fun. And there have been the bad experiences we have been issues where other couples haven't been on the same page as each other. So
that was one issue.
One time, yeah, there was a time where they weren't on the same page with each other. They had jealousy issues that they had thought they had stamped out and didn't. And so we saw that, and there were red flags. And so, you go and you learn. So that is probably the only negative. I guess if you have kids dealing with childcare and babysitting, we have lots of friends that have kids.
Yeah, that's what's hard for us because, like, I wouldn't say we're so old, but I'm older, so I'm so old. But you know what I mean? Like, this would have been like nice to know about like 20 years ago, but it's nice now because our kids are all old enough that they all have their own cars, they can all take care of themselves. Like, so we're kind of are free to go out on the weekend.
Like I said, we go out. We went from never going out on a weekend as Mormons and, to literally almost every weekend, unless we're working or something is going on or family stuff, that we go out every weekend and we tell the kids, all right, you're on your own. We'll be back tonight or we'll be back tomorrow. I don't know. And
yeah,
that's it. So there's a lot of freedom in that.
I love it. Well, I do want to commend you both for coming on and saying hello. And this is our story. And I do think that takes a lot of courage. And we are trying to, in a lot of ways, get rid of the shame. Shame lives in secrecy, right? And so even as I'm starting to talk more publicly about my own experiences, I can feel that nervousness, like, oh no, what are people going to say or think or blah, blah, blah. But trying to quell my nervous system, I'm like, this is my life, and it's helpful for people to hear real life experiences. I know that's the number one thing people say in my ethical non-monogamy group is like, they show up the first night super nervous, and by the end of the first night, everybody's like, oh, it was so good that everybody here just seems really normal. We didn't know what to expect.
Us too.
But that's what literally what going to almost every club that we've ever been to, that's exactly what it is you feel the same way, nervous and scared, and what are we going to do and see, and then you show up and you're like, oh, it's just a bunch of people being friendly and doing whatever they feel comfortable with, and there's never been pressure or anything like that. One thing I would want to say is that we, as much as I am an evangelist for this, I would never want any of our vanilla friends to think that we're trying to convert them to this. I wouldn't want some of our ex-Mormon friends to see this and say, oh, were they thinking about us in this way? And we, because the idea of somebody who's doing this is that this is all we think about. And that we don't have the ability to keep that part of our life completely separate. And that's not the case. These are people that we love for different reasons entirely. So yeah.
Because I do wish we could tell people, like, it's so fun and it's been such a good experience, and we love to like tell our story and all that, but it's so that's frustrating not to be able just to tell people about it. But at the same time, like, we don't want to, like, we're not saying we want to tell you about this so you can join or something, like, but
it's more about trying to share so that people have a different idea. I mean, even when we were Mormon, right, we're trying to say, hello, we're Mormon, we're not weird necessarily,
we're
like, we're kind of generally normal people, although maybe now we maybe don't think that. But I think, I mean, that's all marginalized people, right? I mean, that's a lot of the LGBTQ story. It's like people didn't really start accepting folks on the rainbow spectrum until they started knowing people on the rainbow spectrum, right? And I think it's something similar. I've had lots of gay men tell me that when they came out to their male friends, their heterosexual friends, they get a little weird, like, oh, are you into me? And they're like, are you into every woman that you see that you're friends with? Right? Like, no, that's not what this is about. And so I think as we get to know more people in kind of taboo populations, we start deconstructing these stories or narratives that we have about people we don't know. And I think that's more what you're trying to do here. It's not about converting. It's about saying, hey, like, we're normal. This is part of our lives. This is who we are. This has been beneficial to us. If you're curious about it, we can be a resource. If you're not, great. But at least now maybe you have some misconceptions corrected. I think that's more the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a great way to say it. I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. I know Matt and Gina have told me that they would love to be a resource for folks. If you have questions or want to get in touch with them, that's fine. You can reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with them, because I don't necessarily want to give just publicly your personal info, but they will share that with me. So if anybody wants to have further conversations with Matt or Gina, just reach out. And otherwise, we'd love to hear from you, the listeners, and what other questions you have or what your impressions are about today's topic. And Matt and Gina, thank you so much again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Natasha Helfer podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can also find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The information shared on this program is informational and should not be considered therapy. This podcast addresses many topics around mental health and sexuality and may not be suitable for minors. Some topics may elicit a trigger or emotional response, so please care for yourself accordingly. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes is by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening.
There is a place where time slows to nature's pace, and there is space there to find yourself in her embrace. Some places should be left alone. Now say the Navajo, so we can always go to the homeland of the heart. wide earth's mysteries. Some places should be left alone. Nahotish kishay so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart. Deep in our cities, we sleep without her stars, yet still her presence sustains us from afar. Some places should be left alone. Now,